In the heart of Clarence's house, a seemingly ordinary family dinner turned into a quiet battlefield. No press, no advisors, just a king, his heirs, and a decision that would ripple through every corner of royal power. King Charles, after months of silent contemplation, delivered a line that would change royal history forever. Camilla's family will no longer hold entitlement within royal trusts. Gasps. Silence. And then, chaos. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with a calm too calculated to be innocent. The dinner was presented as a routine gathering, an intimate affair to discuss the upcoming Commonwealth celebrations. But beneath the polished silverware and measured courtesies, something was stirring. The invitation list had been curated with surgical precision. Princess Anne, always punctual, arrived with quiet suspicion. Prince Edward, less political but increasingly observant, took his place with a lingering look at his brother. William, tight-lipped, barely spoke, and yet the absence that loomed the loudest wasn't in words, it was in Camilla's unawareness. She had no idea what was coming. In the hours leading up to the meal, palace aides noticed subtle changes: Charles pacing in his study, cancelling a call with the Chancellor, requesting documents no one had dared to mention for weeks. By the time the guests were seated, the air was already laced with tension. The usual pleasantries felt hollow. Camilla, sensing the discomfort, tried to lighten the mood, but Charles, for once, didn't indulge. His posture was composed. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was deliberate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pause for questions. He simply stated the decree. Effective immediately, the Parker Bowles family will be removed from all royal trust positions and entitlements. For a moment, no one moved. Then Camilla spoke not with anger, but disbelief. "You can't be serious," she whispered. But the tone in Charles's eyes answered her before he could. He was. What followed wasn't a dramatic outburst, it was worse. It was stillness. William lowered his gaze. Anne clenched her jaw. No one defended her. No one opposed the king. The decision had been made elsewhere, behind closed doors, through painful calculations, and with a heavy awareness of what it would cost. A senior aide later confided that Charles had referred to it as a necessary pruning for the crown's long-term survival. Another, more bluntly, called it a bloodless execution of royal ties. Camilla left the table before dessert. No one followed, but to truly understand the weight of Charles's decision, we must go back to the secrets, suspicions, and whispered warnings that led to this night. They were never supposed to matter. That's what many inside the palace used to say about Camilla's lineage. Yet over the years, her family quietly, cunningly, gained influence behind the scenes. What started as dinner invites turned into trusteeships, donations, power. But were they ever truly accepted, or merely tolerated until the storm returned? In the shadows of royal formality, Camilla's relatives moved with precision. While the public focused on tiaras and ceremonies, Camilla's family embedded themselves into the very organs that sustained the monarchy's financial and charitable networks. By the time most courtiers noticed, her sister and nephew had secured advisory roles across multiple royal trusts. The names were never flashy, but the reach was unmistakable. The Royal Heritage Trust, the Queen's Commonwealth Fund, and even the Duchy Future Initiatives Board all had, at some point, Parker Bowles' fingerprints on them. It was subtle, it was strategic, and to some, deeply unsettling. Insiders began to whisper about the soft coup within the Crown's infrastructure. Invitations once reserved for blood royals were now extended to Camilla's extended family. One former aide described the shift bluntly. They weren't content with being guests. They became fixtures. And as Camilla's public image strengthened, softened by years of service and proximity to Charles, her family's private influence expanded. But not everyone welcomed the change. William, for one, had grown increasingly uneasy. Behind closed doors, he raised concerns over the Duchy of Cornwall's financial planning committees, where Camilla's cousin had suddenly taken an advisory position. William reportedly questioned whether those roles were earned or simply granted. His concerns were noted but not acted upon. After all, the king's consort had proven her loyalty, hadn't she? What was a few appointments in her favor? But tension was rising, especially with Princess Anne. For a woman raised under the iron gaze of Queen Elizabeth II, the quiet expansion of non-royal influence represented a dilution of royal discipline. Anne, according to several sources, began keeping a list of appearances where Camilla's relatives outnumbered the bloodline. At a charity gala last year, she was overheard saying, "It's a family institution, not a franchise." The resentment simmered, but few dared to speak openly. Until someone did. Camilla's son, Tom, was recently seen lobbying for increased public visibility, subtly suggesting he represent the royal family at a literary event. It was a small request, but in the context of rising internal scrutiny, it was the last straw for many. A senior advisor put it plainly. They mistook privilege for permanence. And in that mistake, they exposed a fault line the king could no longer ignore. And while the Parker Bowles family quietly built their foundation, a very different kind of storm was brewing, one that would force Charles into a brutal choice. For months, whispers about Catherine's isolation grew louder. Inside the palace, where smiles were staged and alliances thin, she was fighting a battle few knew, protecting her children's future from forces beyond her control. Camilla's expanding circle posed not just a threat to protocol, but to bloodline. It started quietly. Meetings where her name was left off briefing documents, invitations to trust boards that mysteriously never arrived. At first, Catherine chalked it up to oversight, but the pattern grew. One by one, influence was shifting away from the direct royal line and into the hands of people with no true connection to the legacy she had vowed to uphold. Her concerns about inheritance structures and long-term custodianship of the children's trusts were repeatedly met with vague assurances or deflections. Behind closed doors, she began questioning not just the decisions being made, but who was making them, and for whom. The tension between Catherine and Camilla, once hidden under formal smiles, began surfacing in the smallest of ways. During joint charity board meetings, Catherine's suggestions were politely nodded at, then quietly discarded. Her vision for child-focused funding was sidelined in favor of proposals pushed by Camilla's allies' initiatives that appeared noble, but were quietly consolidating authority under non-royal names. William noticed. He raised his voice in private, requesting an internal review. Then came the leak. A private email chain between trustees exposed a coordinated effort to block one of Catherine's preferred appointments. Too close to her personal interest. Yet no one had questioned the same proximity when Camilla's nephew was appointed to oversee a heritage review panel. The double standard stung, and it wasn't lost on Catherine. She didn't fight publicly. She didn't call press conferences or stage a rebellion. Instead, she withdrew. Slowly, methodically. Invitations declined. Photo ops restructured. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. Royal watchers began noticing her absence beside Camilla at key events. Insiders whispered that something had fractured between them. But no one outside the palace knew just how close Catherine had come to walking away from it all. One staff member, who had served her for over a decade, summed it up best. She never raised her voice, but she was breaking inside. Every gesture, every silence, became loaded with meaning. Catherine wasn't just sidelined. She was being strategically erased from decisions that would define her children's futures. And still, she remained poised. Because what she lacked in institutional backing, she carried in something far greater: public trust, and a quiet resolve that had begun to stir something powerful within the halls of Windsor. And just when Catherine seemed close to retreating, an unexpected ally reminded the firm that bloodlines carry a weight no title can overwrite. Anne, Princess Royal, had remained silent until now. Known for her stoic resolve, she stepped forward in a private meeting with Charles and delivered a message with royal steel. "You are risking the crown's future for a borrowed family." What followed was a shift no one saw coming. For years, Anne had kept her distance from internal power games. She didn't seek headlines or ceremonial influence, but when the institution itself was at risk, she knew when to strike. And now, she had seen enough. Camilla's growing footprint over key royal portfolios, particularly in areas previously stewarded by Queen Elizabeth, had gone from symbolic to strategic. Trusts were being restructured. Positions were shifting hands. And Anne, ever loyal to blood and duty, could no longer stand by as her mother's legacy was repurposed in the name of modern image politics. She confronted Charles behind locked doors, in what palace insiders described as one of the most heated exchanges between siblings in royal history. Anne accused Charles of letting sentiment blind him to structure, that by allowing Camilla's family influence to spread unchecked, he was weakening the very architecture that safeguarded the future. The meeting ended not in agreement, but in silence. Anne walked out without looking back, but the impact had been made. The next day, royal advisors noted a pause in planned initiatives linked to Camilla's extended circle. Something was shifting behind the curtain. Quietly, Anne began to rally support not in public, but through tradition. She met with senior advisors, reminding them of the lineage protocols that had safeguarded the monarchy for centuries. The crown, she argued, was never meant to be extended through marriage into unrelated dynasties. The influence must return to where it was born, from blood, from legacy, from duty. Her suggestion was clear. Reallocate trust oversight to working royals with direct succession ties. It was a call for restoration, not rebellion, and it was gaining traction. Soon after, a discreet meeting was held at Kensington. Present were Anne, William, and Catherine. No staff, no advisors. Just 3 royals bound by blood, legacy, and an emerging common cause. It wasn't a strategy session, it was a vow. That the monarchy would not be diluted by proximity. That their children would not be sidelined for those who had never borne the weight of the crown's history. From that moment forward, the narrative began to change, not with statements, but with subtle, deliberate actions. Fewer appearances for Camilla's relatives. Delays in trust renewals. Old names returning to official rosters. A palace aide later summed it up with chilling precision. She didn't threaten, she simply forced Charles to remember who he was and who they weren't. But the real turning point came not from confrontation, but from exposure of something buried deep within royal archives. A routine audit. That's what it was meant to be. But when a junior royal accountant flagged discrepancies involving trust oversight, what began as protocol turned into a discovery that shook the king to his core. It started innocently enough, just a scheduled review of annual expenditures for several royal charitable trusts. These audits happened like clockwork. Most produced nothing more than procedural corrections or minor bookkeeping errors, but this time, something didn't add up. A recurring pattern emerged. Allocations approved without full documentation, fees paid to external consultants with unusually close ties to Camilla's family, and administrative roles expanded beyond what had originally been authorized by the Crown. At first, it was brushed aside as clerical laziness, but as more files were pulled, a clearer and more troubling picture began to form. The name that kept reappearing was Camilla's nephew. Though never formally titled or officially embedded in the royal household, his involvement in the decision-making processes of 2 major trusts raised immediate red flags. Not only had he been signing off on significant spending, but he had also reportedly introduced several advisors with private sector backgrounds, many of whom had direct personal or business relationships with the Parker Bowles circle. No laws were broken, but the lines between royal responsibility and personal enrichment had clearly blurred. When the findings reached the senior auditors, panic spread behind closed doors. The irregularities weren't criminal, but they were ethically explosive. In a monarchy already under intense public scrutiny, this could ignite a scandal that even the best PR couldn't smother. The review team, led by discretion, decided to escalate directly to Charles, but not through official channels. It was handed to him in a sealed envelope outside scheduled meetings with a single warning: "You need to see this before anyone else does." Charles's reaction was swift and unlike anything staff had seen in years. According to a senior aide, he read the entire report in silence, then placed it on his desk and said nothing for nearly half an hour. When he finally spoke, it wasn't anger, it was disappointment. "Why wasn't I told?" he asked, not to anyone in particular. For a man who had long prided himself on transparency within his reign, this revelation felt like betrayal. And worse, it was a betrayal from within. The audit was kept secret from Camilla, at least initially. Charles reportedly instructed that she not be informed until he had made his decision. Whether it was out of protection or control, no one could say. But for those closest to the matter, the message was clear. The king had reached his threshold. The favoritism, the unchecked influence, the quiet replacement of royal duty with personal comfort, it was all coming to a head. One insider would later describe the moment with haunting precision. It was the final straw. The house of cards collapsed. And when the collapse came, Charles knew he could no longer delay the inevitable, not just for the monarchy, but for the legacy he wanted to leave. It wasn't just a conversation, it was a reckoning. In the hours leading up to the dinner, Charles and Camilla met privately. What happened behind that door has never been confirmed, but insiders describe shouting, heartbreak, and one final warning. "If you do this, I won't forgive you." The decision had been made, but it had not yet been delivered. And in that quiet window between intent and execution, Camilla demanded a meeting. She wasn't naive. Whispers had reached her. The sudden hush in corridors when she entered. The delay in her access to certain briefings. And most of all, the unnerving change in Charles's demeanor, a silence too deliberate to ignore. She confronted him directly. What followed was not a calm exchange, but a storm of betrayal and fury. Camilla, blindsided by the audit and Charles's private consultations with Anne and William, accused him of orchestrating a public humiliation. "You've let them poison you against my family," she reportedly cried. Her voice cracked with emotion. But it wasn't just heartbreak, it was fear. Charles, exhausted and cornered, responded with a line that has now become infamous inside the palace. "This isn't about you, it's about the crown." For Camilla, who had stood beside him through decades of scorn and scandal, the decision felt like abandonment. Years of building bridges, reshaping public perception, and rehabilitating her name gone in an instant. And worse, it had been done without her knowledge. Without her voice, she had been excluded from the very process that would define her future within the monarchy. Staff nearby reportedly heard the argument crescendo into an emotional ultimatum. Camilla threatened to step away from public duties entirely. "Let them take it all," she is said to have screamed through tears. "You'll see how fast they turn on you next." But Charles didn't respond. There was no comfort, no negotiation, just a long, cold silence before he walked out of the room. At dinner that evening, the tension was so thick it was suffocating. Every fork placed, every word spoken, felt rehearsed. And yet, everyone knew what was coming. When Charles finally spoke, calm, composed, and unshakable, the blow was surgical. He announced that the Parker Bowles family would no longer hold positions or entitlements within royal trusts. He didn't look at Camilla, and she didn't interrupt. But her silence wasn't surrender, it was grief. William avoided her gaze. Anne sat rigid, expression unreadable. Even Edward, usually the quiet observer, was visibly tense. And in that moment, the monarchy wasn't just shifting, it was bleeding. A quiet betrayal, carried out in full view of family, but hidden from the world. At least, for now. But the fallout wouldn't stay behind palace doors because the world was already watching and the press was already circling. By the next morning, headlines across the globe screamed with disbelief. Camilla's family purged, King Shock's palace inner circle, Duchess in crisis. What began as a private dinner had exploded into a global spectacle, and public opinion wasn't on Camilla's side. Leaks from inside the palace travelled at lightning speed. What was meant to be a contained decision tactfully delivered behind closed doors was now being dissected on every major network, in every language. Royal insiders, emboldened by the shift in power, began sharing carefully worded statements with journalists. While none would speak on the record, the message was clear. It had been brewing for months, and now, the curtain had finally fallen. On social media, the story ignited with unprecedented force. The hashtags number Trust No More and number Queen No More began trending worldwide within hours. Thousands praised Charles's decision as a long overdue course correction, but the real surge of energy came in support of Catherine. People weren't just reacting to Camilla's fall, they were rallying behind the woman many now viewed as the future queen. A wave of posts labelled Catherine the monarchy's moral compass, citing her quiet endurance, grace under pressure, and unwavering protection of her children. Polling data echoed the sentiment. Overnight, approval for the monarchy dipped, but support for William and Catherine surged. The public had spoken, and they had drawn a line in the sand. The message was resounding. Protect the bloodline, protect the future. Even major outlets, typically neutral, began editorializing the moment. This is the most decisive move Charles has made in his reign, one royal correspondent wrote. But it may be Catherine who benefits the most. Late-night talk shows latched onto the drama, turning the royal crisis into a viral media event. Comedians joked about trust fund purges and secret audits, but the underlying tone was serious. Commentators questioned how much influence Camilla's family had truly held and how long the palace had kept the public in the dark. Speculation about Camilla's emotional state dominated headlines. Within 24 hours, it was confirmed. She had cancelled all scheduled engagements for the week and retreated from public view. No official explanation was offered. Then came the photograph, one that would redefine the public narrative. Charles, dressed in muted tones, was seen leaving the private royal chapel alone. The image spread like wildfire. To some, it was a sign of grief, to others, penance, and to many, it was an unmistakable symbol of a monarch reckoning with the cost of his decision, not just as king, but as husband. But as the dust settled, a deeper question emerged. What did this move mean for the future of the monarchy itself? The monarchy has survived wars, abdications, and divorces, but this was a recalibration of its very bloodline. In the wake of Charles's decision, a quiet restructuring began, one that may define the next 100 years of royal history. The internal reorganization wasn't announced with grand speeches or public ceremonies. It began, instead, with documents carefully reviewed, quietly amended, and strategically re-signed. Trust charters were redrafted to reflect a new vision, one rooted not in convenience or proximity, but in blood, continuity, and constitutional clarity. At the heart of this shift stood William and Catherine, now positioned not just as heirs to the throne, but as custodians of the Crown's operational legacy. Senior sources confirmed that the couple would now oversee the majority of royal trust operations, with increased involvement in appointments, oversight, and funding allocations. It was a seismic shift in quiet tones, a monarchy reasserting its lineage with deliberate precision. New appointments reflected this recalibration. Those without blood ties found themselves quietly thanked and released. Meanwhile, long-trusted royal descendants were reinstated to posts they had been edged out of in recent years. The message was unspoken but unmistakable. The Crown was closing ranks. Camilla's family members, once fixtures in ceremonial events and listed in official trustee roles, were formally removed from all positions. Their names vanished from palace press briefings. The images disappeared from royal websites. It was as if they had never been part of the inner mechanism to begin with. Amid this transformation, Princess Anne was offered a new role, a ceremonial advisory position in matters of succession and heritage preservation. For a woman who had served the monarchy with unwavering discipline for decades, it was more than symbolic. It was acknowledgement. A recognition of her place as the keeper of tradition, the bridge between Elizabeth's legacy and the next generation's leadership. Behind the scenes, legal teams worked swiftly, redrafting trust language to ensure no loopholes could be exploited in the future. New clauses were added, defining eligibility for oversight roles by bloodline proximity and succession status. It was protection by design, an institutional safeguard forged in the aftermath of a near crisis. In a rare and pointed statement, a royal spokesperson summarized the philosophy guiding these changes. The crown must always serve, not benefit. It was a sentence aimed at history, a line that declared where the royal family stood and where it refused to return. The monarchy was more than an image, it was a lineage, and it would be defended accordingly. And yet, even as new lines were drawn, one voice still hadn't been heard. Camilla hasn't spoken publicly. Not one word, but inside the palace, her silence is deafening. Will she quietly fade into the background or return with a vengeance no one expects? Allies are still loyal, and some doors, once closed, are never truly locked. The aftermath of Charles's decision left Camilla not just sidelined but erased, her family removed, her influence curtailed, her public schedule quietly frozen. Yet those closest to her say she's anything but defeated. According to former staff who served her during her most scrutinized years, Camilla has never responded to pressure with retreat. One described her current state as devastated but calculating. Another said simply, "She's quiet but not done." And it's that very silence that has sparked the most unsettling speculation. Behind palace walls, reports have begun surfacing that Camilla has made discreet contact with longtime press allies, journalists, and editors who once played a crucial role in reshaping her image after the Diana years. No statements have been released, no leaks confirmed, but the timing is raising eyebrows. Some fear she's preparing her own narrative separate from the palace and on her own terms. If true, it wouldn't be the first time Camilla stepped out from under the royal shadow to reclaim control. And this time, she has more to lose and prove than ever before. Sources close to the communications team claim she's quietly reviewing her options, including the possibility of stepping back from public duties entirely. One aide reportedly overheard her say, "Perhaps they'd prefer I disappear." But others believe the opposite, that her silence is a strategy, that she's simply watching, listening, waiting. While Charles faces growing pressure to stabilize his reign, Camilla may be recalibrating her position outside of the institution's grip through private networks, old alliances, and sympathetic aristocrats who still see her as the rightful queen consort, regardless of public sentiment. Even within William's inner circle, concern lingers. He is said to have warned his aides bluntly, "We must not underestimate her." Because if there's one lesson the monarchy has learned from its past, it's that those written off too quickly have a way of returning with devastating force. Now, as the dust begins to settle over one of the most seismic shifts in modern royal history, the question echoes louder than ever. Is this the end of Camilla's power, or just the beginning of something more dangerous? Could she emerge from this exile with her own version of the truth, or will the silence consume her entirely? Because in the game of crowns, silence isn't weakness, it's the pause before a move that changes everything. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.